You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, along with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke. Welcome to Monday Matters, which is our weekly opportunity just to catch you up with what's going on with Jen and Will and talk about issues that we're learning together. So, Jen, the other day, I returned from an education conference. And by the way, I want to call this conversation impact versus impression. So the other day I've come back from an education conference and I'm feeling unsettled and I can't figure out why, because this is one of those conferences where everything went right. I got to present. I had principals that were engaged. Lots of people wanted me to sign their books. I took a lot of photos and everybody was interactive. And I came home and I was like, why do I feel weird? Like, why am I feeling unsettled? And later that week, I was talking to a buddy of mine, John Mihalio, who's a guest. He was a guest on my podcast, but he's also a podcaster. And you know how sometimes when you finish the recording, then you actually start talking? So I was telling him, I don't know, this weird moment that I was having. And he was telling me about something in his school. He was just reflecting on where he invites students and teachers or parents to participate in activities. And he told me, he said, I never let them call themselves volunteers when they do come to the school to do this. I always ask them to call themselves ambassadors because that's what they really are. And so for some reason, when he said that, my brain just did this light bulb thing. And I was thinking about, what do I call what I just did at that conference? Well, I think I made a good impression. But I think what I'm struggling with is I don't know if I made an impact. And so I don't know why I wanted to bring this to us, but part of Monday Matters is just like sitting on those things we're thinking about currently. And so I guess one of the questions I've been really wrestling with is, how do you know the difference between you when you're making a good impression when you're making an impact?
Well, I think I've thought about this question a lot since you first proposed it. And here's a distinction that I think. Making a good impression feels good. Making an impact doesn't have a feeling, not at first. And I think both are good. I think you do want to make a good impression. Will, have you come home from your conference and felt like you didn't make a good impression? That would be an even worse feeling. You said unsettled. I think it would be, you'd feel really lousy. So making a good impression, you can feel that in the moment. You can feel it in the room, right? People are smiling. They're saying, please sign my book. Thank you for coming. I really enjoyed this. But impact takes a bit longer to feel and to know. And I think about the story. I know I've told this before on this podcast. I went out to eat and a former student, I had her 15 years earlier. She came up to me and said, thank you for sticking up for me. And I didn't remember at the time what I had done, what her story was. I barely remembered her name. And so I asked her and we worked through that. And so I knew then that I had made an impact. But I would never, as a 13-year-old, would she have pulled me aside and said, thanks for sticking up for me, ever. She was 13. So I think that's true. And we could look at it from the lens of a teacher who makes a good impression every day when they're kind to students and they teach their content well. But the impact may not become apparent to them for several years, if not many years. I think from a principal, exact same thing. You can make a good impression. You can be the one out at bus duty that's singing and dancing and welcoming every kid. And you could have positive staff meetings and strong relationships with teachers. Those are all things that make a good impression and feel really good. But will a teacher someday say, oh, that was my favorite principal, or have a kid say, oh, I remember my principal, and be able to say you by name and describe who you are? And then the same with you, Will, as a consultant, you know about the good impression, but what you really want is the impact 2 or 3 or 4 years later for someone to say, I remember sitting in that conference room. And when you told me whatever it is, this is what I did. So short-term impression, long-term impact. And I think they feed one another.
That's really good, Jen. Thank you for saying that. Because I think sometimes trying to separate them could be impossible, because you're right. That professionalism, that politeness, the commitment to excellence makes a good impression, but it also sometimes gives you the credibility and the opening and the permission then to help people grow, which is what you want to do,
Right,
to make that impact.
right. And
Yeah.
you don't want to make a bad impression but have a good impact. That would be almost impossible.
Yeah.
You make a bad impression, you're not going to make an impact. Or people are going to leave the room saying, "Man, can I have my money back or can I have my 2 hours back or whatever?" You want good impression first, and then you want your message to be so profound or so timely or so incredibly appropriate that the impact is embedded within that impression.
Okay. So I'm still going to set on that tension for a minute because something that I've been thinking about is if I'm gaining permission to help other people, to give them impact based on the first, creating a good impression or creating a place where people feel safe or whatever those great classroom settings or conference settings are or team settings are, then what are some of the intentional things that I can do to look for impact, that reflection, that growing, that improving piece? So I actually wrote down some things to myself, Jen, and I'm just going to say them out loud and you can help me reflect on this. But the first thing I wrote down was I still need to discover the needs and challenges someone's wrestling with to understand how to help them change.
Mhm.
I've heard some recently, I can't remember who it was. I heard an expert on public speaking saying, you really can't help someone change until you can create some empathy for where they are. And so I think that's an important part of it is just knowing what are the challenges that someone else is wrestling with so that what I'm speaking to is actually providing some help. Number two, I would say, how do we reframe those challenges in ways where we can help people understand their own perspectives? And one of the ways I like to do this is what I call powerful paraphrasing. Like when someone shares a challenge with me, I like to repeat it back to them until I have clarity because maybe I misunderstood it. And what I've discovered is when I'm getting into a deep enough conversation with someone to repeat back the challenge to them and they get clarity on it, then they start seeing some options for the solutions that they need. And so that leads to the third thing I would say, which is when you've been able to identify challenges and help people see them clearly, then ask permission before you start giving feedback for a way that someone can move forward. Because those are the moments where I find in the follow ups and in the conversations where it seems like meaningful change is really getting ready to happen here. And then I'll add one more, which is I think that I like to kind of wrap up a conversation like that by tell me something that's been really helpful for you so I can kind of assess what was helpful as we walked away to see was I able to make an impact. So those are some things I've been setting on as I think about the difference between impression and impact. What would you want to add to that?
Well, I loved your first one because it speaks to one of my core beliefs as an educator. You said, I'm paraphrasing, powerful paraphrasing
Thank
here.
you.
I really want to listen to understand. I want to understand where other people what they're thinking, what they're feeling, where their anger, where their joy comes from. And so what I say that because the larger umbrella over that is I really want to remember where I want my impact to be.
Mhm.
Um, I think about a colleague I had who had for his classroom two asks of his students: work hard, be nice.
Mhm.
It was so incredibly simple. And I thought to myself, the first time I saw it hanging on his wall, I thought that's the impact I want to make. I want to work hard. I want to be nice. I want everyone that I teach to work hard and be nice. I think our whole world would be a different place if everyone just had that motto. So I reframe that to be my own driving force. I think I'll make an impact if I continue to work hard and be really nice to everyone. I shout out to my husband. He's so nice to kids. And I think about that with when I'm feeling grumpy or I just want to snap at a student or whatever. I want to be like, wait, no, the impact comes when people feel seen and heard and like you really are a kind human being.
Well, as we wrap up this Monday Matters, I'm going to just leave listeners with some questions to reflect on, because Jen, what you and I just did was a reflective cycle that really, I'm just going to say it, most of the high performing teachers I've ever worked with do this after every class.
Right.
Do this after every class. What really worked? Did I really reach the kids? Did they really understand? And if they didn't, what do I need to do different next time? So here's some questions to reflect on this week, Principal Matters listeners. One, when is the last time that you've really reflected with someone else on something you've just currently done, how effective it has been? What's the impact that's been measured there? Because sometimes you can reflect in your own head, but sometimes you can get on the other side of a friend like Jen and I just did and just reflect out loud together. Two, when is the last time you've asked some just good follow-up questions to people in conversations, just so you can gauge their understanding and your understanding of the situation? And then three, when is the last time you examined your own schedule and the priorities that you have on it that reflect where you're making the most impact? Because if you find yourself getting bogged down with reports and emails and policy meetings, then ask yourself the question, okay, what's that thing I could put on my schedule where I know I'm going to step away from it and know, man, I could measure some difference here that I made in this situation. So Jen, I hope that's helpful as we wrap up today's Monday Matters, but those are some thoughts I've had for the week.
Yes, I love them. And I'm glad we're doing these Monday Matters. And I'm going to echo what Will said when we recorded a Monday Matters last week. He said, please let us know what you think. We want to know if you like these Monday Matters episodes. We think they're going to be really powerful, a little bite-sized bit of Will and Jen and their thinking, but let us know. And we're here for you. So we want to make sure whatever we say and whatever we do makes an impact, not just an impression on all of you.
Well, Jen, you mentioned this last time, but in case there's new listeners, you've got some PD coming up in February. Tell people what's going on and how they can connect with you in the coming weeks.
Yep, I'll be working with the Utah Association of Elementary Principals in February. You can reach me at jenschwanke.com if you need me to connect or come work with your group or whatever. Let me know.
And by the time this recording releases, I think I'll be in Miami working with the SAMS National Conference. The following week, January 22nd, I'm going to be in Birmingham, Alabama. I can't wait to be there with Klaus.
You're going south. You're a wise man. You're going south in the winter. I love it. My snowbird friend, William D. Parker.
Yeah. And then I'll be on the 28th in Montgomery. So Principal Matters listeners, if you're in any of those places where you can connect with Jen and me, reach out. We'd love to talk to you. Or we can talk virtually because we do that all the time too. But until next time, thank you for doing what matters. And
thanks, everyone.
You can talk to us soon.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.